The Commanders take an embarrassing loss at home here in Week 3 versus the very impressive Buffalo Bills by a final score of 37-3 in this football game. Welcome to the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry. Let's dive into this Week 3 matchup, starting with the scoreboard here and the stats. 37-3. Gosh darn it, man. That is a big-time blowout for the Buffalo Bills. 6 turnovers for the Commanders offense today. Sam Howell threw 4 interceptions. Antonio Gibson had a fumble, and then there was a turnover on downs at the goal line in the first half. Brian Robinson Jr. was the leading rusher today, 70 yards, no touchdowns on 10 carries. Curtis Samuel was the leading receiver with just 54 yards on 2 catches. Josh Allen and the Bills offense, plain and simply. I thought that the Commanders defense actually did a pretty decent job at holding them to 16 points, even in the fourth quarter. But after the floodgates opened there, after the Antonio Gibson fumble, leading to a touchdown, and then a Sam Howell pick 6 to A.J. Epinesa, I mean, the score got out of hand extremely quickly. Josh Allen on the day, 20 of 32, 218 yards, a touchdown and an interception. James Cook was the leading rusher, just under 100 yards rushing, no touchdowns on 15 carries, and then Stephon Diggs was the leading receiver today, over 100 yards receiving, no touchdowns, though, on 8 catches. Now, let's take a look at how the Commanders did in terms of the keys to victory this week. Did they let Sam Howell cook? Well, let's just say Sam did not cook this week, all right? I thought they gave Sam plenty of opportunities, and I thought, he looked good at some spurts, but he didn't really do it throughout the game, obviously. 4 interceptions in this football game. Didn't convert on the 4th and goal when Eric Bieniemy puts the ball in his hands. He just didn't show up today in the way that we've seen him show up the first 2 weeks, and that was a tough performance for QB1. Then, did they hold the fort along the offensive line? No. In fact, the opposite. 9 sacks given up by this offensive line. And if Ron Rivera can't see the problems with this Commanders offensive line to this point in the season, I mean, he should absolutely be fired. He should be punished for that. I mean, seriously. I think everybody can see that this offensive line giving up 6 sacks versus a bad pass rush against Arizona at home in Week 1. Just getting a 4-point win in that game, by the way. Then you get the Bills at home here in Week 3. You give up 9 sacks to a better defensive line, but now you're going up against arguably the best pass rush in football next week with the Philadelphia Eagles. If they don't make a move fast, I feel like this offensive line could be crumbling before our eyes. Then did they let Diggs dominate? Yes, they did. So they did not. So they're 0 for 3 at this point in their keys to victory. Like we just said, Stephon Diggs, 8 catches, 111 yards. He didn't get a touchdown, but man, he really came up big in some really big moments today. Stephon Diggs really looked like that number 1 receiver that he is. Then did they keep Josh Allen in the bucket? No, they didn't. Josh Allen had a rushing touchdown in this one. He was moving all over the place. He had multiple big runs in this game. Kudos to Josh for finding space, getting out there. He's a great runner with the football. But at the end of the day, man, if you are as good of a defensive line as the Washington Commanders have with Chase Young and Montez Sweat and that great defensive tackle duo, I mean, you have to be able to keep him in the bucket. There's just no excuse for that, and Josh Allen absolutely ripped apart this Commanders defense today. Then, did you capitalize on mistakes? I mean, kinda. You had 1 interception on a 3rd and long that Josh Allen just kind of threw up, but overall, you didn't score on that drive, right? You didn't capitalize on that mistake, and then also, you gave them all the mistakes. We had a bunch of mistakes today, giving them opportunities to score throughout the game, and it just wasn't good enough on all 5 keys to victory today for the Washington Commanders. That's definitely disappointing, but let me know your guys' one-word reaction to this loss versus the Buffalo Bills here in Week 3. For me, my one word is going to be scary, because there's a lot of scary stuff that happened in this game, some very scary trends that ended up going on. But at the end of the day, man, it's just not a very good game. Hopefully they can get better as the season goes on. Now we got the total numbers here for Bills versus the Commanders on offense today. 386 yards total, 5.9 yards per play. They got multiple touchdowns today, 1 interception, no fumbles. So overall, okay, I guess. But when you look at the 6 interceptions on the other side for the Washington Commanders, definitely not great. The Buffalo Bills dominated time of possession today as well. And you look at the Bills number on offense, yards per play, versus the Commanders. Big disparity. Not very good for the Commanders offense as a unit. They did rush for over 100 yards today, so I guess there's that kind of silver lining. But, 4 interceptions, a fumble, and a turnover on downs, leading up to 6 turnovers for this offense today. Not good enough, in my opinion. They definitely need to get things going. So now, grade the Commanders' play in this game. Great. Give me a grade. You gave me a one-word reaction. Now give me a grade. An A, B, C, D, or F down there in the comments section. For me, I'm going to give this one a D-, maybe just a D. This game wasn't completely bereft of good plays and good things from Sam Howell in the offense and even on defense as well. But overall, not a great performance. It's hard to give anything other than a D or an F if you get blown out by 34 points. All right, so now let's talk about Sam Howell a little bit today. Not fantastic whatsoever. 19 of 29, 174, and 4 interceptions. Not good enough for QB1, plain and simply. He needs to play better, and this is just not a great performance for him. He's looked good through the first couple of weeks. Today didn't look quite as good, obviously, but I'm still a believer that Sam Howell can get back and be a good starting quarterback for this team in the future to come. Now let's have a word from our sponsor at BetUS. Go to chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code CHAT125 for a 125% deposit bonus today on deposits of $100 to $600. So here's what's going to happen. If you go to BetUS or chatsports.com/bet and use promo code CHAT125 and you put in, say, a $100 deposit, they're going to give you $125 additional dollars to use on your bets, $225 total. I think that looks like a great stat line to me. So let me know if you guys think that as well. Go chatsports.com/bet for a 125% deposit bonus. Brian Robinson was the leading rusher today, 70 yards on 10 carries. Not much doing for Brian today. B-Rob had a couple nice runs, but that is really about it. And you take a look at some of these extra stats from the Buffalo Bills. Gabe Davis, 35 yards. Trent Sherfield, 18. Stephon Diggs was fantastic. Gabe Davis had that touchdown, had the lone touchdown reception in this football game. Overall, I think you did a pretty decent job holding Gabe Davis and Trent Sherfield in this game, but not Stephon Diggs, and that really was the breaking point in this football game, in my opinion. As for the Commanders, 54 yards for Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin with 41, and Cole Turner with 35. Tex, let's go to the takeaways here when you get a second. I have 5 takeaways that I want to break down with you guys. Number 1, it's a scary performance for Sam Howell moving forward. You don't want to see this moving into the future, right? Sam Howell can't afford to put 3 or 4 of these bad games in a row. This would be the first one in that string because Sam Howell, if he wants to hang on to his spot as the starting quarterback, he can't have 3, 4, 5 bad games in a row. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No. I think Sam's looks actually pretty decent to this point in the season. It was a bad performance today, especially in the second half, but I'm looking forward to seeing if he can bounce back moving forward. Number 2 on my list, the defense, I think actually looks fine. You held the Bills to 16 points at some point in the fourth quarter. You made a couple really big stops. And then once the floodgates opened, it was just over for the Washington Commanders, plain and simply. I love the defensive line. I thought the secondary actually did pretty darn good in coverage, except for Stephon Diggs today. Overall, I think this defense moving forward is going to be just fine. Then also, this one kind of ties back to Sam Howell, but overall, the turnovers need to stop. Okay, you take a look at this week. If you look at that performance versus the Cardinals in week 1, too many turnovers. You have to protect the football if you're Sam Howell, if you're Antonio Gibson, who already has 2 fumbles this year. I think this is an absolute sticking point for this Commanders offense to this point, and they're going to have to get a lot better as the season moves on. But finally, I think that the last 2 things here, I think there's better days ahead, hopefully here. You won against the Cardinals. You won a comeback game against the Denver Broncos. Both teams looking like they're going to go 0-3, by the way. But, looking forward to the future, the Eagles is going to be a tough game next week. But, again, I think that this team, when they're not getting blown out, when they're not down by 2 scores pretty much the entire game, they can settle in a little bit more. They can let the defense win them football games. And I think Sam Howell is good enough to get this team in the win column more often than not and compete for a playoff spot. Final takeaway, and this is my biggest one here, is that the offensive line is terrible, man. It's just not good. Charles Leno Jr., Andrew Wiley, the tackles, Sadiq Charles. Everybody on this offensive line really did struggle in this matchup, leading to 9 sacks for the Buffalo Bills. It just wasn't a good performance by this offensive line, and I would anticipate the Ron Rivera to potentially make a move along this starting offensive line. potentially going out in free agency to grab another piece. And if that happens, if the Commanders make a move this week, you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. So if there's breaking news, we're going to have you covered with a video here on the Commanders Report. Make sure you click that subscribe button for daily Commanders coverage, live watch parties during the season. We have a ton of fun here on the Commanders Report, so make sure you do me a favor and click that subscribe button right now.